What's happening, everybody? Ryan Thomas here, live on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, bringing you another edition of the Thomas Take. And I wanted to hop on here and obviously hop on the show and give you my take on a very interesting streaming, broadcasting merger that took place this past week. Despite the new era that we live in that is streaming with Netflix, with Hulu, with Amazon Prime, and many of the other platforms out there, ESPN has dipped their toes into the streaming waters with ESPN Plus. It's a brand that has only been around for about 31, 32 days, a streaming network that has only been around for a little over a month now, for $4.99 American cents. ESPN Plus is a streaming app that streams 30 for 30s, a lot of exclusive content, the Kobe Bryant show, yada, yada, yada. It's a brand new app that ESPN brought to their audience. You either pay the $4.99 a month or you don't. And if you don't want that, then there's definitely each person at this point, I believe, each person in the United States has some sort of a streaming agreement, whether it's with ESPN Plus, whether it's with Netflix, whether it's with Hulu, whether you have a Chromecast or a Fire Stick or something like that. Everyone has one of those. Maybe people have more than that. I personally, if you're talking about me personally, what do I have? I have Netflix, and I also just subscribed to ESPN Plus. And I got to say, I really like it. I didn't think I would, but I thought I'll give it a shot for the 7-day free trial. I'm definitely re-upping my first month, getting a full month subscription. I might actually buy it for the year at $49.99 as opposed to paying $4.99 a month. You save $10 that way, and obviously $49.99 for a year is cheaper than $59.99 per month. Essentially, is what you're paying. $4.99 times 12, you're paying a little bit more that way. So that being said, I believe that was what the price was. If I read that right, I think I might have read that wrong. Anyway, but outside of that, paying it for a year is actually cheaper. I know that to be a fact. I don't know the exact numbers on that, but I'm pretty sure paying it for a full year subscription is cheaper. That's what I might actually invest in. So, that being said, you get one game daily of Major League Baseball, one game daily of the NHL, and this deal with the UFC is a good one for UFC fans due to the fact that ESPN is known as the mainstream network. Although the ratings have taken a dive in certain aspects, you have other networks like Fox Sports. The UFC has signed a major $150 million deal over a 10-year span with this network. Or actually, a $150 million deal. You get 15 events. Basically, ESPN paid $10 million per year for this merge, and it's a great deal, I think, for the UFC. And I think for the UFC, it's a great deal because the main goal of UFC President Dana White was to make the UFC the Super Bowl of MMA. That was his exact words back at UFC 33, which is the first Zuffa-owned UFC pay-per-view event. Dana White was asked, what is your goal in purchasing and running this company, being a part owner of this company, getting the Fertittas to buy it, you running the show, essentially. He said he wanted to make it the Super Bowl of MMA. He's accomplished that. We have to give that to him. He's accomplished that and then some. One of the highest grossing boxing pay-per-view events, one half of that was an MMA fighter. So Dana White has done some amazing things as a promoter that no other promoter has essentially done. I have to give that to him. As much as I might be a harsh critic of Dana White in certain decisions that he makes with the company, he's made a lot of great decisions. And this decision to make the UFC more mainstream, give this a new platform for a new audience, which ESPN will bring that, I think it's a great deal. I think it also adds to the amount of fans that will be seeing exclusive UFC content on ESPN. I think ESPN will cover mixed martial arts more than they have in years past. You won't have just the side post-fight reactions from some ESPN MMA analysts. You will have daily MMA coverage on ESPN because, frankly, ESPN is missing that. NBC Sports bought the exclusive broadcast rights to the National Hockey League. You have TSN also in Canada that has an exclusive broadcasting rights deal with the NHL. So ESPN is kind of taking a back seat in terms of their hockey coverage. They need something to fill that slot in their programming schedule, and the UFC and would definitely fill that hole. I think this adds another notch in the belt of the UFC, and I remember as many as, let's just say, 10 years ago. It's back in, I was, not to date myself, but I was in high school at the time, 26 now, 16 then. I told people that the UFC/MMA could be just as big as the NFL, could be just as big as Major League Baseball, could be just as big as the National Hockey League, could be just as big as the NBA, and I think we have finally gotten there with this streaming deal. Now, granted, this is not a broadcasting deal. We won't see UFC pay-per-views, former UFC pay-per-views on ESPN on national TV. We won't see national TV style pay-per-view cards, but we will see 15 live events on this app per year, whether you have it on your phone, your laptop, or you stream it to your television. I think it's a great deal, and it's a step in the right direction for the UFC. Now, if you want to talk about the UFC fans and how this deal breaks down to the UFC fans, the UFC actually implemented a streaming service called UFC Fight Pass. It was the UFC's version of Netflix, as I like to call it. Their own streaming service where they had their exclusive library, where they had cards that were only available to this app. And they have had over, I'd say, 500,000 subscribers in the 4 years that they have had this app and the 4 years that they've put this app together. And along the way, you know, there's been some big fights on it, some memorable fights. But I have to wonder, as an MMA fan, I've never subscribed to UFC Fight Pass due to the fact that it was $9.99. I pay $9.99 for Netflix. I pay $4.99 for ESPN Plus. With the UFC charging $9.99 for one platform that offers just MMA, now fight fans will be asked to pay an additional $4.99 for the ESPN app that offers you MMA, UFC events, as well as many other sports and live events around the sports world. The wide world of sports, if you will. So I think the UFC should come to expect that UFC Fight Pass subscriptions will take a huge dive with this announcement that they have now merged with ESPN Plus. Now, this merge does not start until January of 2019, but me, myself, and I wanted to get acclimated as possible to this new streaming deal, to this new broadcasting deal, and I am happy I did, because I've watched a lot of good content on this app, and ESPN has always been known to produce great content. The 30 for 30s, some of the debate shows that they have been highly successful. ESPN First Take, while I do think it's taken a hit without Skip Bayless, it is still one of the most popular, most watched shows in sports programming. So you can listen to exclusive podcasts, which, as everybody knows, I'm a podcast guy, being that I host my own podcast, which you are tuning into now. And I enjoy listening to podcasts. I'm huge on podcasts. I think they are great, no matter what the subject matter will be. I'm a big podcast proponent, shall I say. I'm all for it. You get exclusive updates on the teams still. And as far as on your favorite teams, I should say, and when I open the app, you see so much available to you at your fingertips that is not always available on television. I mean, in terms of the podcasts that you can listen to, there is so much there. You can listen live to the NBA playoffs. You can favorite certain podcasts, which I have favorited plenty of podcasts on this. Brett Okamoto's 5 Rounds, Fantasy Football Now, you name it. And there is featured content. There is ESPN Plus content. There's ESPN Originals, as they call it. And then in January of 2019, there will be UFC content available. Every single UFC event will be available on this app. Every single fight, whether it was in the UFC, WEC, Strikeforce, Pride, will be right at my fingertips. That has me fired up. The fact is, there are probably some fans out there that are a little bit tiffed that they paid the $9.99 for UFC Fight Pass for maybe 4 years, and now there's this app coming out, this app that is merging with the UFC that only charges $4.99 for practically the same thing. I mean, more live events, more coverage, pre-fight shows, post-fight shows, weigh-ins will be able to be watched at your fingertips, as well as premium content that will be, announced at a later date. There's still some gray areas to this deal, but I, for one, am very excited as an MMA fan to know that the sport is growing in a positive way with 2 major brands, ESPN and the UFC. I think it's going to be a good marriage. I think it was a great move for ESPN to kind of pry a piece of the UFC away from Fox Sports, and it could lead to more in the future, much more between ESPN and the UFC. As far as the Fox Sports realm goes, we'll find out what happens with them, but in ESPN's case, they have to be happy that they have something to really help build this platform that they are putting heavy promotion into, and they have had some very well-received original shows that I think people will enjoy. Now, as far as the $4.99 a month, I don't know what events will be on the app. Will they be pay-per-views? Will they be fight nights? Will there be separate more events? Only time will tell. But I do think that this is a great deal for the UFC. I do think it's a great deal for ESPN. I think the biggest loser in this deal, though, might be fans that have subscribed to Fight Pass for the last 4 or 5 years that will have paid for UFC Fight Pass for $9.99 for 4 years, and now they have the option to pay for something cheaper. Something cheaper has come along. I guess that's a positive, but I could see that as a negative as well. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Take. Take care.